Hi, I'm Dr. Felice Gersh, your integrative OBGYN today, here to discuss a very important topic, mental health in women who are going through and have passed through the menopause. But first, to introduce myself to those who are new to me and my program. As I mentioned, I'm an integrative OBGYN. I did a fellowship that was at the University of Arizona School of Medicine in integrative medicine for 2 years a decade ago. And since then, I have incorporated many of the very evidence-based therapies that are available that are often not accessed by the conventional doctors. But I haven't abandoned conventional treatments. I still incorporate pharmaceuticals and surgery when they are indicated. But my therapeutic toolbox is expanded to include all the different areas of lifestyle medicine, nutrition and fitness and stress reduction, improvements in sleep. As well, I incorporate evidence-based supplements, nutraceuticals, and herbals. So today's program is about an incredibly important topic, emotional health, mental health. Well, it turns out that women as a whole have twice the incidence of mental health issues involving anxiety and depression as do men. We are different and we're wired differently. Our autonomic nervous systems are different. Our immune systems are different. We have some different organs and we really function quite differently. Well, whenever there's a big shift in hormones, for example, after a woman delivers a baby, the postpartum time, and when women sometimes shift onto oral contraceptives, when women go through menopause and they lose their ovarian production of estrogen and progesterone, these are the times when there's a higher risk of a woman developing mental health problems like depression and anxiety. Whenever there's a downward shift in these hormones, that can be a trigger, particularly in women who are susceptible. So if we take the average woman who tends to have a statistical risk that's double that of men of having anxiety or depression, what happens when their ovaries go into a state of senescence, ovarian aging, and they no longer can produce these hormones? Well, at that point, the incidence of anxiety and depression of a clinical nature, significant and also life-altering, doubles. So the incidence doubles when women go through menopause. Now, what about women who've had prior problems, say postpartum depression or depression on oral contraceptives? Their risk goes up 4 full times, 400%, fourfold increase in their risk compared to during their premenopausal years. This is not insignificant. This is so huge, and yet it's so poorly recognized. But if we look at the prescriptions of antidepressants, we find that women, of course, it shouldn't be of course, but it is because that's the way it goes, are the recipients of the majority of prescriptions written for antidepressants like the SSRIs. These include drugs like Prozac, Lexapro, Zoloft, Paxil, and then similar related drugs, the SNRIs, that include things like the Effexor and Cymbalta. So there are a host of these medications, and of course there are other drugs that are used off-label for depression, like some of the drugs that are for seizures, like Lamictal and gabapentin. So there are a host of drugs that are used for depression and anxiety in women, and women are the main recipients of these drugs. And in women in their 40s, it turns out that depending on who's doing the survey, where it's being taken, something like a quarter of women are being prescribed these medications. That's pretty substantial, but there's a huge percentage of women who are not being prescribed these medications, but they're suffering as they are transitioning in their 40s. Their hormones are changing and they're going into menopause. Now, what is happening? So what is triggering? I mentioned that declining hormone levels are like a risk factor for developing anxiety and depression in women. So what is going on in the brain and in the body as a whole? Well, we now know a great deal about what estrogen and progesterone do in the brain. I'm going to focus today on estrogen, and we'll talk more about progesterone. I never want to slight progesterone because it is incredibly important. It helps with sleep. It increases the neurotransmitter GABA. It also increases neuroprotection. It's great for the brain, but we'll come back to that another day. Let's talk about estrogen. Well, it turns out that there are special neurons in the brain called serotonin neurons. Now, you may have heard of the neurotransmitter called serotonin. Serotonin is an incredibly important neurotransmitter that's involved in thinking processes and in sleep and in feeling good and calm. So it turns out that these special serotonin neurons are influenced greatly by estradiol. Estrogen that's made from the ovaries is called estradiol. And estradiol changes how the gene expressions work on these neurons to produce and support more production of serotonin. It works to support the health of these neurons and to just generally the functionality of these neurons. So after menopause, the brain of a woman literally produces less serotonin, this feel-good neurotransmitter. That is one reason why I'm so pro-hormone. Now, the brain loves estradiol. It even makes estradiol. Now, it does not make estrone. Estrone is a different estrogen in the family of estrogens and predominantly works on one estrogen receptor called the estrogen receptor alpha. Estradiol, on the other hand, works across all the different estrogen receptors, and the brain has different estrogen receptors concentrated in different proportions in different areas of the brain. So for everything to work with beautiful synergy, you need to have estradiol. The brain loves estradiol. The brain doesn't make estrone. The brain doesn't care for estrone. After menopause, estrone is the dominant estrogen in the body of women. Where does it come from? It comes predominantly from fat tissue that has the enzyme aromatase that can transfer and change the existence of androgens into estrogens. And the androgens are converted predominantly, not exclusively, but predominantly into estrone. And estrone only works predominantly on estrogen receptor alpha. And for everything to work properly in the body, you need estradiol. As I mentioned, it has the balanced effect on the different estrogen receptors. So after menopause, the brain doesn't have enough estradiol in the brain to support these serotonin neurotransmitters to make an adequate amount of serotonin. Now, I don't know if you know this, but serotonin is the precursor to melatonin. Melatonin is made from serotonin. And so if you don't make enough serotonin in the brain, you're not going to then have enough melatonin. And melatonin is a potent antioxidant. It has many functions in the body. It also helps to regulate glucose. And as well, it helps you sleep properly. So that's another reason why after menopause, women have a great array of sleep insomnia disorders. If you don't make enough serotonin, you're not going to make enough melatonin. Now, what can we do? Well, it turns out that one thing, other than taking hormones, which you already know I'm very pro for the vast majority of women, it turns out that sunlight is happy medicine. Sun actually comes into the eye, and there are special receptors in the eye that pick up sunlight and then transmit this message of light into the brain that helps activate the serotonin neurons. That's why the light that people are often treated with for seasonal affective disorder, that's when the sun doesn't rise very much and it stays dark all the time and people don't get enough sunlight. then they feel depressed. So they use light boxes to treat seasonal affective disorder, where you don't get enough sunlight and you use a light box to replace the sun if the sun is pretty much not in the sky much of the day, like if you live near the North Pole, okay, or the South Pole, then you're going to have times of the year when it's dark for most of the day, and maybe there's only a little bit of time when you actually have light, and even then it's more like twilight. So bright light is happy medicine. Now, assuming you don't live near the North Pole or the South Pole, get outside. First thing in the morning, get some bright light, open all the shades, get the windows, to be right near you, go by the windows, and also midday. That'll help you to feel happier. Now, if you just can't do it, then buy a light box. Get exposed to about 10,000 lux for 30 minutes first thing in the morning. You can turn on your light box while you're getting ready in the bathroom, and that will help you a great deal. Make sure when you go outside, you're not always wearing sunglasses. You need some bright light coming into your eyes. We're not going to give you cataracts by getting some light exposure, okay? We don't want you to bake in the sun. We don't want you to get a sunburn. We don't want you to have unremitting sunlight coming into your eyes, but you need some to activate those light receptors that transmit the signal to activate the serotonin neurons, so you make more serotonin. That's why if you spend the day out at the beach or you're walking around Disneyland, you're out in the sun all day, guess what? You sleep like a baby and you feel so much happier. So remember, sunlight will help support your serotonin neurons. Well, what else happens in menopause? Well, it turns out that estrogen, in the form of estradiol, helps to control the function of immune cells. And there are specialized immune cells in the brain. They're a form of macrophage, and they're there to surveil. They're watching out for you. They're usually in a quiet, like watching out state, like a watchdog, just watching over things. But if there's trauma to the brain, if there's an infectious agent like a virus or a bacteria that gets into the brain, then they get activated. So then you have activated cells of these immune cells. And these immune cells are called microglia. Now, estrogen modulates the activity of the microglia to keep them properly functioning, because they are vicious when they want to be. They produce enzymes that can, they're like Drano. They dissolve things. They're designed to dissolve injured tissue and then gobble it up so that you can then improve the area and lay down new healthy tissue. And they gobble up and dissolve invading pathogens, bacteria and viruses and such. Now, what happens if these weapons of mass destruction are not controlled? Well, instead of staying in their quiet state, they become activated. They can actually destroy healthy neurons. Now, what on earth would activate them to go crazy? Well, when you are a menopausal woman, you have dysbiotic gut microbials. What does that mean? The microbial population, these microscopic organisms that live in your GI tract, become changed when you go through menopause, because hormones have a big impact. That's a complex situation, but you end up getting what is called impaired gut barrier, and also known as leaky gut. And these toxins that are produced in the gut leak out into the surrounding immune cells, which are also part of the immune system, and they also have a lower threshold to release their inflammatory products in menopausal women, because just like estrogen, the form of estradiol, modulates, controls the immune cells in the brain, the microglia, so too they control the immune cells of the whole body, including the ones that are lining the GI tract. So these immune cells become inflamed and they circulate around the body and they cross into the brain itself and create inflammation. They're releasing their inflammatory products that cross into the brain, and they themselves can also cross into the brain. As well, after menopause, women are more prone to getting fatty liver. The liver does not detoxify, and the body accumulates more toxins, which can also cross into the brain, inducing more neuroinflammation. Now, we know that neuroinflammation, inflammation in the brain, underlies a great many neuropsychiatric conditions. Depression and anxiety, we now know, are related to inflammation in the brain that we call neuroinflammation. This inflammation is triggered by peripheral, total body related inflammation, which also rises after menopause. You get a total body state of inflammation. In addition, you get inflammation increasing in the brain, and the immune cells in the brain, these microglia, become dysregulated and then can create basically havoc and create damage and create this ongoing state of low level inflammation known as neuroinflammation, which underlies a lot of anxiety and depression. So what can we do about that? In addition to getting hormones, we can eat the right diet and eat according to the right rhythms. Because another issue that happens after menopause is that the master clock in the brain, a group of neurons called the suprachiasmatic nucleus that sits atop the optic nerve and senses light and dark and nutritional status, it also kind of what we call shifts, and it becomes sort of also dysregulated. So after menopause, women live off the beat. It's like they're living a life of jet lag. So what we want to do is eat on the beat, because we know that anyone who has jet lag, no matter what the cause, like they stay up late at night, they work nights, they're flying across time zones, whatever the underlying cause, they are more prone to depression and anxiety. So we want to get up and go to bed at the same time every day and at appropriate times. Like try to get to bed no later than 11 p.m. Get 7 or 8 hours of sleep every night. Get up, and after you wake up, within 2 hours, have a big, healthy morning meal. I'm not saying breakfast anymore because people associate breakfast with crap food. So we'll just say a healthy meal. Try to have a big, healthy meal within 2 hours of awakening. Try to fast from dinner to breakfast for 13 hours. And then go about your day and don't snack. Then have a light lunch and a medium early dinner. No snacking, no late night eating, and you will live to the beat. By eating the right foods, and by the right foods, I mean plant-based, lots of whole grains, root vegetables, fruit, vegetables, lean protein, but in small amounts, like 3 ounces of animal, not more than that any day, and also beans and lentils and peas, all the legumes. So eat healthy, farm to table, skip the middleman, no ultra-processed food ever. That is poison to your system. So by getting sunlight, by eating to the beat, by getting enough sleep, and of course all the other things like working on fitness and having purpose in life, love, sex, having friends, doing fun things, all of those things will help to stave off what is really an epidemic of mental health problems across the board, but especially in women as they go through and progress through the menopausal years. So take care, stay well, stay happy. I look forward to seeing you next time. Bye.